Hi, this is my presentation on game analysis of Until Dawn. What is Until Dawn? Do you know what Until Dawn is? No? Don't worry, did I startle you with that? See, Until Dawn is about a group of high schoolers who meet up at their friend's ski lodge 1 year after the death of two of their other friends. As the night goes on, the mystery of what truly is happening on the mountain is uncovered. However, these mountain secrets prove to be deadly, so the group must try and survive until dawn. So, when it comes to the gameplay of Until Dawn, it's mainly consisting of choices. And you can see on screen here, the choices can be, something like this of, oh, let me just say something serious or humorous, and it gives a little bit of context between what that can mean for your character's dialogue. However, these choices can dictate pathways and can have effects on later events. And it also can influence how other characters interact with you. So if you are being mean to one character or kind of going against them, they're going to have more of a negative light with you later in future chapters. Some more gameplay elements involve quick time events, which you can see up here with Sam. She has to hit this climb, and so you will be either hitting circle, triangle, square on your controller in order to complete certain timed events like ducking, climbing, or jumping. Other quick time events are quick choices. So that is down here where you can see it has a timer around your normal choice options, which can lead to both positive or negative effects. An important thing that the game teaches you is that sometimes the best thing to do is to do nothing. And that is a really important lesson that the game hammers home with you with different choices that are timed. Here in this event right here, it's teaching you about how quick choices work. And if you don't choose either of these options, it doesn't really affect too much, but that's because it's an intro. It's trying to tell you, hey, you only have a limited amount of time to choose these options. In later sections of the game, those choices and not choosing either have very, very important impacts on how your story will progress. Now, another big mechanic is the shooting mechanic. So how it works is you have to aim your trigger right here, or you have to aim at the target right here. So you have to move your cursor down to the target, right? And then confirm your shot. And this can be a little bit difficult to control, especially on a controller. However, an important thing about the shooting mechanic is that it also has choices involved with it. Because with this, you can choose to shoot something, or you can choose to not shoot anything. You can also choose to shoot completely different things, and that can lead to positive or negative effects. Such being, like, in this scenario right here, you can either choose to shoot the Wendigo or not, and if you don't, that could lead to deadly effects for Chris. Now, another big thing with the Until Dawn franchise is the don't move mechanic. This was a crazy mechanic because it involved motion controls for your controller, which meant you cannot move your controller in these scenes, which is very hard to do. And you can see your controller had to stay within these lines. If you didn't, it means that you moved, and that can have devastating effects in the game. As the don't move mechanic is mainly used when going against Wendigos. And in that, whenever you are facing against a Wendigo, it usually, if you don't hit those don't move events, it can have deadly consequences, often resulting in characters' deaths. Now, when it comes to the setting of the game, it is taking place on Blackwood Mountain, and you can see here that it is very spread out, which can lead to characters being very far apart. Another key part of it is the snow element. So, in the location of Washington, um, it is always snowy, no matter what time of year it is. But particularly during this game, I believe it is more so in the winter time, during winter break for them. So it's actually even worse out there than it typically would be in the summertime. Another thing is that in the wintertime, it is darker for longer. And we can see that because in Until Dawn, it takes a really, really long time to actually be able to see dawn. Now, some of the other things that play into this setting is the nature of the Wendigo. So, the Wendigo is actually from Native American lore, and it often is in the region that this Blackwood Mountain takes place in. So the lore of the Wendigo is very much tied to these kinds of locations. So it's very thematic that it is taking place here, and how they deal with the whole Native American lore with this as well, because it is stated within many things about how this land was taken over from Native Americans, and how their ancestral home is very much not upset, like not doing good with that. They're very upset with the fact that it is being taken advantage of and taken from its native people. And we see this more as the story progresses. Now, getting into characters, I'm going to be introducing them in the same lineup as they're introduced to you guys in the game. And also, as I talk about these characters and more of this game, I will be kind of spoiling it. So if you haven't played Until Dawn or don't know really what goes down in it, I will be kind of just taking it from the entirety of the game. So when we come to Sam, she is the first character that you play as, and she's also the one with the most physical activity in the game. So one of the biggest parts for Sam is that she climbs out of the depths of the cave because she's able to rock climb, right? And another thing is that she also has a faster walking speed than everyone else in the game, which showcases her adventurousness by displaying her physical ability. Another interesting thing about her is that she is one of two characters that have to make it to chapter 10. So even if you do horrible with all of her quick time events and everything, she will survive. And another interesting thing about her is that she is one of the few likable characters in Until Dawn. So, and one of the reasons for this is because she is Hannah's best friend, and so during the incidents leading up to Hannah and Beth's death, she was there kind of being like, why would you do this? And oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, here, let me try and help. And that really shows her considerate nature. And the thing is about a lot of these little describers that come up on screen is that when you first meet the character, you're like, oh, okay, that's cool. But you don't really think about how they play into the actual character. And I didn't either until I looked more into really the game and how it really works with the characters. Our next character we meet is Chris, and the really interesting part about Chris is that we actually learn the shooting mechanic from him, and he continues to be one of our main people that we use it with throughout the game. So it's kind of interesting how the game teaches us this mechanic with this one character and continues to move it on for later in the game with this character, because it's like, oh, well, you already associate it with this character. We should keep it continuing to be associated with this character. Even though other characters may eventually get weapons and also guns, he is still the character that we associate the shooting mechanic with because of learning it from him and continuing using it with him. Some other interesting things with him is that because of his crush on Ashley, it actually leads him to be in more scenarios with her, and this also leads to him becoming more protective around Ashley as the events of the game continue, because of the traps and the horrible situations that both of them are put in together. Another interesting thing is how they do the humor on Chris. So in the beginning of the game, he's very much like joking around with his buddy Josh, but towards like the end of the game, there's not really much joking, and that's mostly due to the situation. But it's an interesting evolution as he goes from, not being very carefree, very like relaxed, to a very much okay, I'm here, I've survived, like I'm just trying to get through one step at a time, and he leans into more of his like methodical nature of just trying to get through each event. Now, Jess is an interesting character because she's one of the characters we play the least. You heard me right. We play her one of the least amounts. And the other interesting thing is that she is new to this friend group. So she is one of the new people in this friend group. So she was not here last year during the events that took place that killed both Hannah and Beth. The other thing that is kind of sad about her that I wish we could have seen more with her. Instead, she was kind of pulled into being the damsel in distress for most of all the game, and instead of using that confidence that we have right here, she instead is more just used as a motivation for Mike throughout the game. Um, but the thing is that like even though it's like, oh, I wish we could have played as her more and like seen more of her, she has a really rough night, and it's definitely showcased in chapter 10 really, really well, because they lean into the fact of she is not going to be running after what she just went through of being dragged through a window and then just dragged through the wilderness and then dropped down a mine shaft. She's not running after that. She is hurting so bad after that, and they do a really good job of showcasing that and really showing how like her confidence is just fractured at this point, because she just got absolutely mauled. And the thing is that's really interesting though, that even though she is barely hanging on, she's still able to grab some kind of item and try and protect herself and defend herself, which I think is really cool that they were able to at least kind of showcase her trying to fight for herself, even though she's depicted as a damsel in distress for most of the game. Now we move on to Matt, who is also new to this friend group, but just like Jess, we don't get to play as him much. Um, and he also is mainly used as a way to just showcase Emily's controlling personality, which is interesting because he doesn't really get to choose options that go against Emily when he's with her. And when he's with her is most of the game because the two of them are boyfriend and girlfriend. But he doesn't get to make choices that the player would want to make. He gets to make choices that Emily wants to make, which helps showcase her character, but it also showcases how, even though it says Matt's ambitious and motivated, he's kind of getting blocked in that department of, not being able to really put it out there because of Emily. Now, another interesting part about him is that it says he's active right here, and we really do get to see this when he has the axe in the game, because when he has the axe, he not only is able to break a door down if he wants, he's able also to make really dangerous decisions, even if Emily chooses not to. One of those being if he chooses to attack one of the caribou within a huge herd of them, which of course results in a very, very painful death. But regardless, he can make that choice, and because the reason is because it's more of a active choice. And so we see that he is able to make more active and, more physical choices rather than just, more conversational choices. Now, Emily. Emily is used as the smart Asian stereotype and also the mean girl stereotype. She is often who players want to kill off, and the game knows it. The game knows it and rewards it. Uh, this is by giving her one of the only characters that has so many deaths. I think there's only a few characters that kind of rival her in her death count, but she can be killed in a lot of different ways. And it's because they chose to make her a very easily hateable character. Because the thing is when she's on screen, especially with Matt, you no longer as a player get to make a decision. And that easily can frustrate players into being like, "Oh my gosh, I hate her." And the other interesting thing about her though is that from her, you know, mean personality, even though she goes through this whole evolution and this whole crazy night, in the end, while she's talking with others, she still has that very mean, very combative personality, because while they're in a bunker, uh, during a situation where they thought she might turn into a Wendigo, and they're like, okay, it turns out actually the bite's harmless, you're gonna be fine. She gets so mad at Ashley that she ends up screaming at her and slapping her. So the big key with Emily is that even though she goes on this whole journey to learn about, being, better, or just big, oh my gosh, I almost died, holy crap, she doesn't change her personality. It just means that she's like, oh my gosh, I almost died. And this is also seen when they're running out of the house. She will push Ashley back just so she can get more ahead. So she is depicted as very clearly a character that you should not like and that you definitely won't like. And then, but what really is the kicker is that even though she's depicted as a character that the player most likely won't like, she is one of the most rational characters in this entire game, because she's the one who points out, hey, this is kind of weird. You know, she's the one who points out, wait, why didn't the authorities find this thing, this clue about Hannah and Beth? They supposedly searched the entire place, right? She also is the one that's like, hey, let's try and call for help, right? So she is definitely decently rational in this, but that doesn't take away from the fact that she is very mean and she doesn't hide it. Now, moving on to Mike. Mike is definitely a bit of a douche when we first meet him. And one of the big things that is very telling about him and Emily's intro cards is that, unlike their partners that say that they are Mike and Emily's, girlfriend and boyfriends, it says that they are each other's exes, which tells the player more so that it's this relationship that was fizzled out is more important than the relationships that they currently have. It also showcases that, hey, we need the player to know these two are no longer in a relationship and it's going to be a big deal. And so that's a very interesting part about how their title cards both coincide and really shape our perspective of how both of their relationships are actually going to be played out. Another thing about Mike is that he is one of the other one that can make it all the way to chapter 10, even if you don't exactly succeed in his QuickTime events. This is because he's got a lot of plot armor. Because you get to explore a lot of different places with him, and the game needs to be able to progress to chapter 10 in some way, shape, or form. And it's done through both Sam and Mike. The other interesting thing about him is that even though you see him in the first place as a bit of a douche, he's kind of like, oh, great, here comes this guy. As the game progresses, you see more of a heroic version of him. And this is because of his motivation, as said earlier with Jess, his motivation to save Jessica. Because the whole big thing that makes him into, okay, I need to keep going, I've got to, try and, do something, is because he witnesses Jessica get ripped through a window, grabs a gun, and books it after her, right? So, him being more heroic is actually even more rewarded in this case in the game, because if you go faster in the game to get to Jess, she is more likely to be alive. And so the game is rewarding you to be more heroic as Mike. And it also plays into his driven personality trait up here, because while he's trying to find a way to get to Jess and save her, it plays into him being driven and motivated to find her. Now, when it comes to Ashley, she is one of the few characters that makes decisions beyond what the player decides. And what I mean by this is, when you play as Chris, depending on how you treat Ashley within the traps that they're in, will decide if she will open the door for you when it comes to Chris being chased with Wendigos behind him. And that's very interesting because it kind of plays into uh her nature of just kind of being like, all right, this is really interesting, of like, inquisitive nature and also forthright, because she's very much being more able to discern what she wants on her own, and being able to think about like really how things are going to be affecting other things and why something is. And this is also seen with her and Chris looking around the house and finding clues and linking things together. Even if those clues were set for them, later on, when they are genuinely looking for clues that they have no idea how they connect, um, you can see her again looking around and trying to find things. Alrighties. One of the most complex characters in the game. He's also one of the characters we don't get to play as until Chapter 10. It's Josh. Josh is, I say, a character that does a really good job of faking us out, because he has the same intros as everybody else, and yet his playability is hidden from us in such a smart way, because we think he's not playable because we can't play a dead character. But he really tricked us with that one. The other interesting thing is how they hide his mental health issues by putting complex, because if they had put let's say uh crude, or more like humorous, or maybe more distraught, or something else more of the nature, we would have kind of clocked him as being like, ooh, that's different than everybody else. And still, when you see complex, you think, that's a little different. I don't know if I trust this guy. But the thing is they balance it out by putting thoughtful and loving, right? But the thing is that we don't see Josh being really thoughtful and loving with anybody else, any other of the characters in the game, except his sisters. Those are the only two people that he really is loving and thoughtful to. And that really showcases like how big their deaths really affected him. Because the thing is Josh had issues before Hannah and Beth died, but after they died, it just got even worse. And what we see throughout the game is him going from joking and his crass personality turning into very manic behavior and a disillusion from reality that we get to fully see on full display when we play as him in Chapter 10. And the thing that's really interesting that we see from Chapter 10 is how he blames himself during that night of how they died, because he couldn't be there for them. And so we see how, like, not only does he blame himself, but also how the others kind of factor into that blame as well. How he not only just blames them, but him. Now, when it comes to side characters in Until Dawn, the reason they're side characters is because either the only reason we play as them is an intro section, or we don't play as them at all. So when it comes to Hannah and Beth, when we played as them, we weren't technically making new decisions. We were just rehashing the past and just explaining kind of what happened back then. And when it comes to Flamethrower Guy, we never get to play as him. He is an outside character from our playable roster. Now, when it comes to Hannah and Beth, we don't get too much about Beth. We just know that she is Hannah's sister, and she is very caring towards Hannah because she cared enough to run into the woods to try and see what's wrong with her and get her back to the lodge. Now, with Hannah, we get a little bit more information about her throughout the game. One of which is that she really likes Mike, and with that, that's kind of how it led into the event of their death, with her liking Mike being the main center of teasing. Now, when it comes to Flamethrower Guy, he is a man who lives on the mountain that they're currently at, and he hunts down Wendigos. So he is like the Wendigo expert on the mountain, and so he knows how to deal with him. He knows everything about them for the most part. And so he's kind of our Wendigo tutorial when it comes to when he's introduced. So he kind of catches everybody else up to speed who didn't know what was going on. Now, with the narrative of this game, it is an adventure narrative, which means it is very much branches and gates, but much more complex. So with it, you can have pathways that go to this point right here. So you can have different choices within, let's say, oh, I want to be, funny in this instance, but that doesn't really change too much of what is said dialoguely because it just filters back to the normal until you get to this big gate here. And in doing so, that kind of leads you into only these two paths. And once that happens, you are now on this track and you can't touch this path again. Now, when the butterfly effect, this game beats you over the head with the butterfly effect. It's in their intro, and in chapter 1, we actually hear a character talking about the butterfly effect. The butterfly effect happens when a tiny butterfly flaps its little wings, and it results in a devastating hurricane. Now, we see the butterfly effect throughout the game, and I've mentioned some things that actually are the results of butterfly effects. One of the most common ones and the most early on one is with the baseball bat in the basement. So Sam can choose to high-five Josh or not, and if she chooses not to high-five Josh, he will lock the baseball bat, which means when she's running from the killer, she can't grab the baseball bat and defend herself. She has to keep running, which will only happen because she didn't high-five Josh, which is a small, very small, random little detail that resulted in something much bigger. And this happens throughout the game. Now, when it comes to the intro of the game, I hinted at it a few other times, but let's get down to the details here. When it comes to the intro of Until Dawn, we open a year ago with Hannah and Beth and the rest of the friend group, minus Jess and Matt, because they don't exist in the friend group yet. Now, they're having a good time talking, but they decide to pull a prank on Hannah because they know that Hannah loves Mike. So they decide to kind of convince her that Mike's like, you know what? I think I love you too. Get in here. And so they kind of convince her to start undressing herself because she thinks that her and Mike are about to have sex. And in reality, everybody is hiding there, waiting to, just waiting to pop out and be like, haha, I got you, which is humiliating. That is humiliating. And so she is so mortified by this that she runs out into the forest, and we get the iconic line of, it's just a prank, Han. And followed by Beth running after her, trying to console Hannah. However, they do not make it back to the cabin. They instead hear weird sounds in the forest and start running away. However, they're so focused on running away from it, they don't notice they run off a cliff. And a mysterious guy, leans down to try and help them up. However, they don't end up getting the help that they would have wanted, and they both fall to what we presume is their deaths. And their bodies are never found, which is why they are missing and not labeled as dead. Now, then Josh starts opening and introing with his little YouTube video talking about how it is the 1 year anniversary and that he's so happy that everybody agreed to come back. Now, some other interesting parts about the narrative is that you get a lot of different side plots going on, because the big key parts of Until Dawn is that there is so much going on and a lot of different factors at play. And we're going to dive into the different plot points in a second. But the other thing that really is a key part of Until Dawn is the character perspectives. Because it's not just one character through the entire chapter. You get slices of different playability for each character within the chapter, and that allows you to kind of see things from their perspective, because depending on what character you're playing as, you'll have different options within the moment and different ways to affect the narrative depending on the character that you're playing as in the moment. And you play as every character at some point. Now, I know I mentioned Josh you don't get to play as until chapter 10, but you get to play as him eventually. Meaning that you get to see every character's perspective at some point in the game. Every main character's perspective, I should say. Now, another key part before we get into the plot points is the in-between chapters elements with Dr. Hill. These elements are very strange when you first start looking at the game, because you're like, why are we in a psychology office getting psychoanalyzed, right? But as you continue on, you start thinking, who am I? Why am I this masked, gloved hand? And what does that really do with the game, right? Because through this, eventually, it goes from, oh, who do you find scarier, man or woman, to which character that we have seen in the game do you like more? Emily or Josh? And so it kind of plays into the fact of, okay, so this person knows who they are, so who is this person? Are they the people that survive? Are they the killer? And eventually we do get the answer, And it's very satisfying because at first we do think it's the killer because it's revealed, oh, they have the same mask on. And then when the killer is revealed, we find out, oh, it's it's Josh, right? And when it comes to these psychological sessions, we kind of get an insight onto how Josh's personality, like Josh's psyche, is really doing. Because each one of these assessments slowly degrades and just eventually breaks down into just nothingness. Because eventually it just turns into Dr. Hill yelling at Josh of, what's wrong with you? Why are you doing this to them? Don't you see you're hurting them? And it's interesting the difference in how the two of them interact with each other in the beginning of the game then towards the end of the game, because the fracture is also seen within Josh's character in game as well. So not only are we seeing him breaking down while we play in the game, but also in the in-between sections, which is kind of an insight into his mind. Now, I did mention it already, but the mass killer is a major plot point when it comes to Until Dawn, and it takes up Sam, Chris, and Ashley's time. So those are the three characters that are mainly affected when it comes to who is really the center point on this killer's hit list. So the other interesting thing about the killer is that he makes a lot of horror movie references when it comes to his killing methods. So you can see right here, it's very much giving kind of a Saw-esque trap, and it even has a buzz saw. And there's other saw traps, like when saws are coming down to Ashley and Chris's heads, and they have to choose, and Chris has to choose whether he shoots Ashley or himself in order to stop them. But the other thing that he makes references to is Scream. So how he makes references to Scream is through his interactions with Sam, really. So with Sam, he doesn't immediately go and chase her or put her in a trap or anything like that. He more so just watches her for a bit, and then he creates this film for her to watch later, which, yes, is kind of Saw-like, but I think it's also kind of Scream-like because of the way that he is kind of narrating the movie. He kind of just describes it as like, oh, do you think, like, she knew this was like her last days to live and all of that? And it very much has those references of movie killers and not actual killers. It definitely gives the theatrical like twang to it. Whereas the thing that it doesn't have in common with Scream is that the killer does not run. He meanders, which is very similar to Michael Myers and Jason, where they just walk because they know they're going to catch you eventually, so they just walk. And that's how the masked killer in Until Dawn feels as well. He knows he's going to catch them. He knows this house better than any of them do. And because of these little hints that we get with how the production is, how the killer is, we kind of can clue in on who the killer really is, which is Josh. Josh is the killer, But the thing is he doesn't kill anybody. He never kills anybody. All he does is just make fake death traps and stream them for an audience, which plays into the fact of him just trying to get revenge on his sister's death. Whereas many of them accuse him of being like, no, you killed this person. And it's like, no, I didn't, actually. But nobody would believe him because of the traps that he just put them all in. So he put himself in a predicament of fake killing people to being mistaken as actually killing people, which makes him break down even more. The other thing that was kind of foreshadowed, and they did a really good job about it, is how, as I stated in the opening, he kind of has this YouTube video saying, oh my gosh, I'm so happy you guys are coming here. And then we find out he's streaming them getting tortured and thinking they're going to die. Which is really interesting because if you think about it, it's like, oh my gosh, what? That makes so much sense because we see like video equipment all around the house for no reason, besides the fact that his dad is a movie person. But even then, why would you have this much movie equipment in your lodge? So it's really well done of how they kind of set up who the killer is and how you can kind of guess a little bit of who it is just based on some context clues and some of the actual clues that you find in the game. Now, another thing that Josh does as the killer is showcase Hannah and Beth as like kind of ghostly entities. And this kind of pulls in a supernatural element into Until Dawn. And it adds a level of, oh my gosh, the ghosts are trying to get revenge, before, of course, we find out that Josh is the killer. So it adds another layer of something that's going on when it comes to Chris and Ashley. So the two of them, they're going through it because they're like, oh my gosh, not only are we running away from a killer, it's also Hannah and Beth being upset with us and wanting to possibly kill us or get revenge. So it's really interesting how it kind of plays with our ideas of what really is going on, and it also showcases how the characters also are like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on. This has been such a crazy night. Now we get into the other side of the plot, which is the Wendigos. So the people who initially really deal with the Wendigos before it's everybody is Mike, Jessica, and Emily. And so Mike and Jessica are really the first to have to deal with them, with Jessica being pulled through a window and Mike having to run after her. And this eventually leads him into the sanatorium, in which he learns about the history of the miners there. We also get the history of miners through Emily as well. So with Mike, he finds out about them, and he kind of learns about how there's these miners that got rescued, and oh wait, they're not well. Okay, that makes sense why they're in the sanatorium getting like fixed up, kind of recovering. But you see the progression of how, oh no, they continue to get worse, and how their bodies are changing in a way that is not human. And we find this video of one of the miners kind of freaking out in a chair and a nurse walking away, and then it kind of the miner just kind of cracks his bones and all that, starts walking up the wall like a spider, and the nurse comes back and starts freaking out because bro's on the side of the wall, on the ceiling, crawling after her. And we also learn that the reason that these miners are sick, supposedly, is that they were trapped in the mines for at least a few months. And originally, there were 28 of them, roughly, and only 13 of them survived. Now, we learn more about this with Emily, because so Matt and Emily decide to go to the fire tower to try and get more help. So they're trying to radio for help because there's no cell towers on here, right? And there's actually a plot point of Josh saying, "Oh, if you have a spare million around, I'll tell my dad to put them up," to Chris. So we get the hint, hey, we can't use cellular devices at all on this mountain. And so that's why Emily decides for Matt that we are going to go to the fire tower. And at this fire tower, they get attacked by Wendigos. And this attack consists of them destroying the cables that hold up the fire tower, and the fire tower collapsing into the ground, resulting in both Matt and Emily getting separated eventually. And with this, Emily is now in the deepest sections of the caverns, and she's able to find clues. So she finds more clues about the miners, but the other thing that she learns about is what really happened to Hannah and Beth. So on the way up to the fire tower, we kind of find something interesting, which is Hannah's, I believe it's Beth's phone. And you think, why didn't the police pick that up? They should have been able to find that, right? Well, she realizes why they didn't really find it and why they were labeled as missing. It's because they fell down this cavern that she's now in, and they couldn't find a way out at all. Or at least Hannah couldn't find a way out. You see, Beth died on impact. So Hannah had to sit in the caverns with her dead sister for months. And eventually, Hannah got hungry. And in her little diary, she writes about how she just had to eventually eat her. And while we're playing as Emily, we find only Beth's head. We don't find her body, which is a key part of what we later piece together in the final chapter, that Hannah became a Wendigo because of her consuming her sister out of desperation. Now, when it comes to the mystery of Hannah, it's a very big part of the branching pathways of this narrative game, right? Because you can play the game and you can completely miss this small little thing that's off to the side in the final chapters, right? So if you don't get it, then Josh will be killed, and you'll never know that Hannah was that Wendigo. Whereas if you find it, and you also tell Josh, then he'll identify that it is, in fact, Hannah because of her butterfly tattoo. Yeah. Her butterfly tattoo, which is something she got because she wanted to be more liked by Mike. Yeah. She got that butterfly tattoo to kind of be able to get with Mike, because she thought, oh, if I'm more rebellious, then he'll like me more. which is so sad that the big distinction that Hannah has to really showcase who she is, even in this form, is simply something she got because she wanted a guy to like her. Which, looking back and analyzing this game, is just so devastating because it's really full circle on how her being teased by liking Mike kind of landed her into the situation, and now the reason of her liking Mike is what identified her to her brother. And then, of course, I can't stress this enough, when it comes to Wendigo lore, right? And they find this out through the flamethrower guy's notebook. So one of the key parts that they are looking through, or Ashley is looking through, is the notebook of him. And so, as she's looking through this, she finds out that Wendigos can only happen if you are in this location on this mountain and you consume the flesh of another human. And in doing so, you open yourself up to being possessed by the Wendigo spirit, which is very much in line for the most part with Native American lore. However, the design of the Wendigo is a little bit outside of what is traditionally Native American, and I think the reason they did this is so that then they could kind of pull away from the connection more so. And I think it was really smart because a lot of people see this as kind of desecrating Native American heritage and all that. And it's really interesting because they tried to make the creature into something a little bit different than what is traditional, to try and step away from what could be perceived as using something that is taboo. Now, this game works. It's a phenomenal game. And if you haven't played it, you should play it. Now, why this game works is because it really it puts you in the driver's seat of a horror movie. And there's plenty of times that we've thought, oh, that's what I would do in the horror movie, or you'd think, no, I would never do that. Why would they do that? And so it kind of makes it to where, oh my gosh, I can dictate what these characters do in this horror movie situation, and I can show how good I am at staying alive in a horror movie. And with some of the things that Until Dawn did right was the choices and how it kind of played out the narrative and the foreshadowing that it did. It definitely did the butterfly effect really well for the time that it was made in. And it also did a good job of kind of making the characters be very much a part of a traditional horror movie sense, because in traditional horror movies you kind of hark on the stereotypes, especially in older horror movies, and they do that really well, especially when it comes to Emily herself. Now, what did the future games do better? Well, future games like the Quarry, they made the characters more likable. So the thing with Until Dawn is that many of the characters, you don't really have motivation to keep them alive beyond being like, oh, I want to try and keep everybody alive. You know, you don't feel like, oh, I want to keep this person alive because they're a good person. And I think that's what Until Dawn did wrong with their game, because they could have done better with that and made characters, even Emily, a little bit more of, oh, I want to keep her or anybody else alive. And I think that The Quarry, which is their newest game that is set in a very similar kind of gameplay, they did really well, because even with characters that you disliked, you wanted to see them succeed because you knew kind of their motivations behind how they acted. So you weren't as much of, oh, I don't like this person. There's not really many redeeming personality traits of this person. It's more of, oh, this person is kind of mean or kind of off putting, but the reason behind that is because, oh, they just really don't want to be here anymore. They want to move on to, college career, right? And another thing that future games do better is kind of the branching pathways. And the reason behind that is because Until Dawn was very new in the sense of branching pathways games, and when it came to butterfly effect games. So, future games that come later have a lot more different pathways and a lot more things that affect even later situations within the game. And I think the reason that is because when we first played Until Dawn, we were like, oh my gosh, the butterfly effect. Everything I do could matter. And when you look back at that game and really analyze it, you realize, no, only certain choices truly matter in that game. And I think many designers later thought, oh, how can we improve upon that? That's why Until Dawn is such an important game, is because it kind of opened the floodgates to the idea of movie games. And yes, there are other games that kind of had this, but Until Dawn opened the idea up of the butterfly effect and how it's such an important part. It also opened up the idea of more in-depth interaction when it comes to these games, because games like Tall Tale, most of the time, you are just pressing certain buttons and you're not really doing much else other than that. Whereas with Until Dawn, yes, you are pressing buttons and trying to do quick time events like that, but you're also doing events such as the shooting mechanic, which is a very much more technical gameplay experience when it comes to such a game that is very much a movie night game. And it kind of opened the door for other games to consider the idea of, hey, what if for this movie game we allow the option for a player to be able to have a more game-like experience? So think of Dispatch with their very much the idea that you can either play this as very casual quick time events, or you can add in very complex quick time events, which, yes, it could be influenced by Until Dawn, or it could not be, but I'd like to believe that Until Dawn had some influence on Dispatch, and of course, it had influence over the Quarry as well. and many other games that are movie-like games had been influenced by Until Dawn. Overall, I love Until Dawn, and I especially love some of the games that came after Until Dawn. The reason why some of the games after Until Dawn didn't work as well until we got the Quarry is because they pulled away from what made Until Dawn so good, which was it's a horror movie. It's a classic teen horror movie. And I think that's one of the big things that really made Until Dawn Until Dawn, because it really hit home of this is a horror movie and you're playing it. Anyways, I love Until Dawn, and I hope this video showed you some more stuff about this game and maybe taught you some new things about it. Or if not, hopefully it got you interested to learn more about this game and maybe even convinced you to play it.